Where do you, where does the camera guys, where do you want, right here where I'm standing? Okay, good. Let's see, everybody. What's up?
I'll start with this one. Back in November, there were 4 of us members who did a sort of a 4-member demonstration. And mine was preparing a wood blank that had cracks in it. And what I brought in is this piece now, completely finished. As you can tell, basically what I did was I took that blank, wrapped it in plastic, and just poured resin. I don't have a pressure pot. I don't do that. But it turned out really cool. Sometimes you have a little void or two, you put some more resin or epoxy in there and it finishes. But it's a beautiful piece of plain box elder and the cracks turned out actually kind of cool looking. This is a walnut bowl, large piece of walnut with the little triple foot on the bottom. And I did piercing around the end here and a little insert in the center. It looks really, really nice. I like that. And these two, I've never had a mallet for chisels. And I thought I should make one. And a little hammer like this for just sort of knocking tenons in place and moving wood around. And so I had some leftover hard maple sitting around my shop, and on a Saturday about 2 or so weeks ago, I cranked both of these out in about an hour and a half. It's pretty fast, really easy, just straightforward piece of maple, 2 pieces, drill a hole in there, pop in the handle, a couple of little copper pins that hold it in place. Actually, the glue holds it in place. The copper pins are just more for looks. Anyhow, real quick, real simple, and takes no time at all.
These aren't mushrooms. These are wig stands. Several of us went to the Barneveld Robust Symposium that they had in, what was it, November? And there was a guy from Wausau there, and he would think he made 100 of these, and they're distributing them to women's that are going through cancer treatment and they lose their hair, so they need wig stands. And I thought that sounds like a pretty good thing. Basically what this is 2 bowls and a spindle. You can do it any way you want, but you can use up a lot of your stuff. But my advice is don't use 2x6s. You spend more time sanding the bloody stuff than it's worth. So get a good piece of hardwood and that'll work. So, and if you guys would be interested in helping out, we could maybe work this into a charity deal where we'd be doing fundraising, or not fundraising, but community outreach. And there's a group in Delafield, right on Highway 94, I-94 and 83, right by that. If you go to Madison, it's that big yellow barn. It's right in there. And they do all kinds of stuff with this. So I want to see how she accepts this stuff and what they're going to do with it, but that's the spiel. So maybe next month she can come and give us a little talk, a little presentation of what they're all doing. Okay.
I've been here before talking about Russian olive, a kind of a nasty landscape plant, but the lumps along the bark, these tiny little burls, are quite pretty once you go through and get that surface off. So for Christmas, I took one of those burls and I turned it down to a small, well, coin size piece, utilizing some of the sapwood in it. And it just made a really pretty, almost stone-like piece. Very simple. I made a few others. The finishes on these are kind of crummy. One of them I tried nail polish. But anyway, just an idea on some of the things you can do with these tiny burls that are all along the stems of Russian olive. So if I ever get any more Russian olive from neighbors or friends that I do pruning for, I'll bring some in for you to play with. Thank you.
Haven't been here for a while, so I thought I'd bring three. More. I have an individual that gave me 3 burls that I'm turning for him. And this one, I've never seen one quite like it because it's black walnut. Have you ever seen that type of a burl in walnut? It's literally penetrates, it goes through. It could serve as a colander almost because it's full of holes, but very neat. What? I'm not filling the holes. I don't put colored stuff in there or anything like that. They're gonna, you just don't put anything that's wet in there, otherwise it'll run out. Huh? The holes actually go through. Okay? Anyone else seen that burl in a walnut? I've never seen it before. This was supposed to be a burl, but I got into it, and I think what it was a growth cap. You know, the growth collar that goes around the branch, and the branch is broken off or damaged some way, and the wood is growing over to heal the wound, and it goes in every direction. It's maple, nice coloration and stuff. I haven't got finish on these 2 yet, so the color will jump. It's an unusual piece of wood. I picked this up down in Taos, New Mexico. It's Arizona cedar. And when you start looking at it, it's got awfully narrow growth line. Real narrow growth line. I threw a piece of tape in there and started counting, and from the center out, it's 210 line, 210 growth line, 210 years. And look at the size of the piece. Living is tough down in Arizona, even for cedar. I do have another burl that I still have on the lathe, and I took it I wasn't real pleased when I found out it was willow. I've tried to turn, the weeping willow. I won't even try that again because the wood is so weak that it breaks out, whether it's wet or dry. You can't really turn the stuff. This, I think, is black willow, a burl about like this, and it has got grain in it like I've never seen in a piece of wood. I won't be able to show you the piece, but I'll bring pictures. Just a couple, this is an all-time favorite. I did this years ago, and you can't find one like this anymore. This is curly koa from Hawaii. They're no longer shipping raw wood out of Hawaii. The only koa you can buy legally is something that has been made into a piece. But if you take that out in the daylight, you swear you've got fire in your hands. And the back is every bit as wonderful as the front. All right, let's see it a little better there. How many? I don't think any of you have ever seen this. This is red oak, but it's bird's eye red oak. You ever see bird's eye red oak? It's the only piece I've ever seen. Now, it'll be over here. You can take a peek at it. And this is just swamp white oak. You get grain going every which way. It's an old one. It's you fiddle back in it. You've got the rays, the whole bit. Okay. I'll have them on the table. Thank you.
I'll be quick. Back in September, I think it was, we had Dave Landers. I had to get up here for Andreessen. I understand why I said that. We had Dave Landers and, you know, I got him lined up simply because I wanted to learn how to do these pewas or these butterflies. And so like $300 worth of equipment later. Here is my efforts. And hopefully I'll get better as I go on. These are literally the first four that I did, but yeah, it's kind of neat. Adds a little bit to the bowl.
Okay. This is in memory of my father. He wanted the burl turned. So when he came home on hospice, Jim Andreessen and his good friend came over and it's a big burl. They stuck it on the lathe and they cored it out. I believe it was cherry, right? That was kind of the determination. We're not 100% sure. Jim Andreessen turned this one, and my dad's good friend from Racine, who's also a wood turner, Bob Klein, turned this one. And I do have a request. One layer of velvet oil was put on this one. The second layer was put on and it's tacky. So if you could help me determine what to do next, I think it has to be resanded and then reapplied, but maybe you have some suggestions. And then my daughter engraved the bottom of them. Jim Anderson, directed by Mel Mickey, and Bob Klein, directed by Mel Mickey.
One quick comment, if you look at the bowls there that we did with Mal, the little one, the one I did is a little bit thicker, and I told him I left it thicker so his great grandkids can play with it, so that's why I left that one in there. Okay. The demo with Dave. Like 2 weeks after that, I did not have, Santa didn't come, so I did not have the $300 worth of stuff yet. So I didn't have the templates. And I didn't have anything for the router, so I kind of a lame first attempt. But that's what this is. So it's without the templates, kind of chiseled out, and then just kind of bandsawed the bow ties, and that was my first attempt. I've made at Christmas. I got the all the collets for the router. I got templates, so I've made a few since then. And I'll bring those, but I put finish on them and they just weren't dry enough to bring. Shortly after the demo, I remember when Jerry Tackus, probably like 10 or 12 years ago. And I don't know if you went to a seminar with John Beaver, but John Beaver did like the wave look. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. I think Dave maybe mentioned that. That was kind of like the precursor to what he was doing. So Jerry had a jig made. So I went over to his house and kind of modified a little bit and kind of went off of that. And that's what this jig is right here. So this just gets, if anybody remembers from the demo. This just has a slide, obviously for the bandsaw. And then this is the piece that came out of it. Whoops, and I just broke it. But this is just to give you an idea of the piece that came out of it. It's got a slide back and forth. And it's got 4 rows of different holes where you can kind of move and get different radiuses for the cut and different size pieces. Pretty slick, pretty easy, really holds the piece well. I've done like, where it's sticking out probably like 14, 15 inches and I can still get a good cut. I've done like double cuts and double rows of bow ties, and it's pretty slick. You can even use this for like straight across cuts, just 90-degree cuts if you want to cut like a vessel or a bowl in half and insert some other wood or do whatever kind of embellishment went. But kind of a first lame event, it's fallen. You can see some dents in it, but it just kind of, and I haven't taken the bottom off, but at least it gives you the concept and the idea. But really easy jig to make and works great. So.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. So peppermills. I need a timekeeper. Somebody tell me what time it is. 7:14. Tell me when it's 7:45. Yeah, if they're closing the register. Yeah, okay. All right. Peppermills. So regardless of which mechanism, there's a number of different mechanisms. There are, for instance, this is what's called a crush grind mechanism. They sell this upstairs. Just a word to the wise, they also sell a woodcraft version of the crush grind mechanism, which is not genuine crush grind. The crush grind will say crush grind on the bottom. The price here at Woodcraft is very similar. PSI also sells their own version of the crush grind mechanism. The crush grind mechanism itself, the true crush grind, I believe, comes with like a 2-year warranty. That's if you don't break it when you install it. If I remember, I'll talk about that a little bit. This is also a crush grind mechanism. This is a shaftless crush grind mechanism. I have one here that's ready to turn. It's been laid out, it's been drilled, but it's just kind of sticking together here. So that's what the mechanism looks like. And then because I do what I do, I have a threaded top on it. So here's a crush grind mechanism. These simply pull apart. And we're gonna demonstrate this. So some of this maybe will make more sense after a little bit. This one is in white oak. So we use a 1 16th inch drill bit to drill the center of the shaft. This sticks out here, this little piece that sticks out, which is this piece right here, happens to fit that 1 16th almost perfectly. There's just a little bit of wobble there. I have also on these, I've made a tenon here, but that's tricky because the tenon, the thickness of the wall of the tenon where it sticks out is not very thick. This also is a crush grind. The only thing that I would talk about here is I was making them more like this, and then I started making them a little bit more like this with either a double or a single bead on the bottom, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is a salt shaker. It's supposed to match a pepper grinder, but again, as a salt shaker, because I do what I do, the top threads off. These can be purchased from Woodcraft or Craft Supplies or just about anybody else. And when you buy them, they come with a little rubber plug. And I've done the salt shakers with the rubber plug in the bottom, but again, I like this a little better. This one actually needs to have a little bit of the adhesive scraped away with my thumbnail. I like best to use a silicone type adhesive here, so that as the wood expands and contracts, which it will do in a kitchen, the silicone has a little bit of a give to it. A harder adhesive would tend to crack, and then somebody shaking salt out of this could end up with a whole shaker full of salt on their hash browns or whatever they eat with them. So personally, I've never used one of these. It looks to me like the salt would just stink and pour out of these holes here, but that's what they give you. I suppose I could drill my own holes. So that's kind of an overview of, okay, so that's the crush grind mechanisms. And then this is a more of a standard type mechanism. So I made this peppermill today so that I'd have everything fresh in my mind, and just about everything that can go wrong when you make a peppermill went wrong with this particular one. I have it screwed in, so I can't really show you. But the mechanism is not identical, but it's similar to this. This is a Woodcraft peppermill kit, and I think this is the only conventional, what I'd call conventional, with the screw that comes through the top of the mill. This is the only one that I can find upstairs right now, and it comes with all the pieces and then 4 different shafts. So you always suspected that Woodcraft gives you the shaft. That was just that was low hanging fruit. Couldn't pass it up. So when you buy a peppermill kit, what you do is you get all the pieces to make one peppermill, but you get 4 shafts. And then you get to pick which one to make. So this ultimately will probably end up in this, which is supposed to be a mill that will match that shaker. And the person I got that wood from said that he would buy those. So a little luck. So the conventional one is the one we're going to talk about tonight, because if you can do a conventional mill, you can do a standard crush grind mill with very little modification. The drill size is slightly different, but you can. So this is a conventional mill laid out, because there's 3 challenges in my mind to making one of these. One is laying them out. The second one is the drilling. And the third one is the turning. Okay, the turning is the most fun because you get to do your design work, if you will. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like after the break. But the first thing you do is you have to lay this out. So what I like to do is I like to take the kit that I'm going to use. And we have a kit here. And we're going to want to cut any icky wood off of the bottom. We're going to want to recess that up a little bit into the bottom of the mill. And then we want our body of our mill to come out somewhere to where we have a nice round top to turn. So if I'm doing a number of mills, once I lay one out, look at that. Once I lay one out, then I keep it laying around to use as a pattern. Now, it's interesting that just looking at that, I kind of picked almost exactly the same point to lay my layout lines. But in addition to the mill body itself, I also need a couple of tenons. You might argue whether or not you need the one on the top end, but we definitely need a tenon on the bottom end. Okay. So then, in addition to the tenon, how do I want to say this? So this is going to be tenon. That means this is going to be the bottom of the mill. That means I want the top of the mill about right there. I definitely want a tenon here on the top of the mill. And then I also want a tenon down here. Okay. So that means that that's about where I want to lay out the top of the mill. Now this is box elder. I will not make a peppermill out of box elder, but it's a nice white wood to show you where my pencil marks are when I do layout. So there, now I've laid it out. So at home, I take it over to the bandsaw and I cut these two pieces out. You could do it on a lathe if you don't have a bandsaw, but if you have a bandsaw, it's quicker and probably a little bit safer to do it on the bandsaw. Then you end up with something like this. Oh yeah, one thing I always do while I'm laying this out is I make sure that I know which end is which. On that piece of box elder, there's not much excitement in it, but on this piece of olive ash, you can see that I want my grain pattern to flow. By the way, for those of you old timers, that HB on that stands for Hank Bardenhagen. I bought this off his son after Hank passed away. So we end up with these two pieces. And I get my little plastic center finder. This is not rocket science. I place my X's on all four ends. And then once I have my X's placed, take my scratch awl, or if you prefer a center punch, I like the scratch awl better. It makes a little bit smaller hole. And then I put a divot in each end of these. Okay. And then I start turning. So remember, I want a tenon on each end of this one, and I want a tenon on the top end of this one. So what I've done here is I've even written, because it's easy to get confused. This says, I can read it, you might not be able to. It says top, chuck. That means that's the end with a tenon. This says bottom tenon because it gets a small tenon to fit in the 1 1/16 hole. This says top. This says bottom. Helps me to keep everything straight. So we're going to start out with a spur drive center and a live center with a point on it. And we're going to start out by roughing this. I tightened my headband and then I was looking for the on button. Some of you will know what that means. My trend air shield has an on button that right above the headband adjuster. It wasn't there. So you guys' job is you're all supposed to go shh, so that I feel right at home. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're just going to use a standard spindle gouge. Spindle roughing gouge, I should say. So those are roughed out. One thing I didn't talk about, it occurred to me as I was roughing those out, is I want to talk a little bit about blank size, which what I'm talking about is a peppermill diameter. I said that on this mill that I did today, just about everything went wrong that could go wrong. And one of the things that happened is I lost some of the diameter. And I'll try to remember to tell you how that happened later. Yeah, well, there's another thing, but it's really a little bit smaller than I'd prefer for a mill of this height. So the largest drill we're going to use tonight is 1.5 inches. So, I mean, our machinist brain says, well, for 1.5 inch drill, I can easily put that in a 2-inch block of wood. And yes, you can, and you can make a 2-inch in diameter pepper mill, but it won't have a lot of stability on the table. It'll be a little tippy and a little top heavy. So, you know, you're better off for a 2.5 or 3-inch diameter piece of wood. Oh, interesting. So, all right. So now we are going to drill. And do that. We need a lathe chuck. We're going to start with the bottom. So I use my tailstock to line that up, just so that hopefully we have, yeah, it's done fairly decent. So if you're ever looking through the Grizzly catalog and you see this south bend, I forgot to do something. Some of this stuff seems a little bit fiddly, but if you don't do it, every little bit helps. So what I want to do is I want to true this up. As I cut it on my bandsaw, it's not perfectly true. And even if I had cut it on the lathe, there's a pretty good chance it wouldn't be perfectly true. And we're not going to be able to true it all the way into the center, but you'll see that we can true it far enough to be effective. By true, I just simply mean I want to bring this and take this, I don't know, it's not out around. What do you call that when it's not cut straight? So what the reason that's important is then that helps the chuck engage the wood all at the same time, or at this, as it approaches the wood, the drill bit engages all the way around at the same time and keeps it, hopefully keeps it from going crooked on you. And I have done that on that piece today, but whether it's because of that spalted elm had a uneven surface area, or if I didn't have the other end of the mill body as tight in the chuck or what, I don't know, but it went wobber-jawed on me. And that's where I lost the diameter of the pepper mill. Just demonstrating you got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And what I'm looking for and not finding, but I've had since I got here tonight, is a key for my chuck. Yeah, that'd be it right here. Thank you. That was just a test for you guys. So I've done enough of these. I've bought carbide Forstner bits. This one isn't as scary, but not only are they carbide, and I bought these last few off of Amazon, but they have a hexagonal shaft on them. So they don't spin in the chuck is what I'm getting at. So, and then they sharper. So a Forstner bit is a very efficient bit in cross grain, but it is not worth beans in end grain. So like I say, I've done enough and I'm doing enough of these that I went ahead and on Amazon, they're not too bad. I think the brand on this blue one is called Roman or something like that. So in the interest of time, I won't try to explain why. We just know that we want to make this initial drilling at 1.5 inches. So this is a 1.5 inch bit. If we were making a crush grind bit, we'd be making it at 1 3/4, or this is actually a 40 millimeter bit. I think they're 1.5. I think they call 35 or 38. I can't remember. So we're going to be drilling, and again, depending on the kit, we're going to be drilling 2 or 3 concentric holes. With the Forstner bit, if you want to drill concentric stepped holes, you always start with the largest first and work down to the smallest, because the Forstner puts a point, a dimple in the middle of the bottom of the hole. For conventional bits, you always start with the smallest and work up. So even though I was only able to true down to within 1/4 inch or so of the center, you notice come up to the wood with the Forstner bit, it just takes care of that. It's still running nice and true. So at home, I know how many threads per inch my tailstock has, so I count, all right? I'm gonna guess here, I don't know. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At home, that's 1/2 inch. I don't think it's 1/2 inch here. 6, 7. Okay, so now we're gonna stop. We're gonna take a look. So my lathe has 10 threads per inch. It's one of Brent's good ideas. It's just a heck of a nice deal, because 1.5 turns is 1/8 of an inch. 2.5 turns is 1/4 inch. Well, 1 1/4 turns, I guess, is 1/8 of an inch. Something like that. But anyway, so this tenon is going to come off of here, and we want approximately 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 to 1/2 inch of a tenon up inside here. So we have to do math. So that tells me that I am exactly just a hair past 1/2 inch, and that I have almost exactly 1/4 inch of tenon. So now I'm a little less than 3/4. We're going to go ahead. Thank you. Good. So there's 3/4. So the next drilling we're going to make requires us to use a Forstner bit extension. So again, I have a carbide bit, and it's on an extension. The extension also has indexed sides on it so that it doesn't turn. And this particular carbide bit is a 6-sided bit. If you are cheap, you can make your own extension. Here's one that I made just out of a piece of 3/4 inch, really crappy steel, as it turned out. It almost looked like gum on the end of the drill bit when I drilled these holes, but it drilled true. And it's a pretty good extension. I don't even know. I don't even know, I guess I was trying to drill the whole mill in one shot. I honestly don't know why I made it. I need to take these small set screws out, drill them and tap them for larger set screws. But other than that, it's been really effective. But I hardly ever use it anymore because what you're going to see here, okay. Yeah. Well, and I don't know, my my friends with portable tools, it's kind of a habit of mine to leave the chuck key and the chuck on the tailstock. Makes them crazy. Take that out of there. Why? What's it gonna do? Okay. So, okay, this is, see that wobble? That's one of the things that can go goofy on you. So I don't know if you can see it, but, and there's not a lot we can do about it. So I drill an inch at a time, and I've just counted, there's 12 threads per inch on this. Now, why not drill the whole thing? Some of you know. Because you'll bury that bit in there, and then you'll spend 15 or 20 or 3 hours trying to figure out how to get it out. So an inch at a time. So real quick, before we take a break, I'm going to finish this, and I'll go ahead and drill. Well, maybe I'll wait till we get back. So again, it seems a little fiddly, but these things that, these little bits of things that you do can save you so much aggravation later on. So what I'm using here is a detail gouge, which is a small spindle gouge. So my standard Forstner bit, my 1 1/16, it might be floating around here somewhere, I'm not sure, actually has turned color on me from drilling peppermills. Now, I won't tell you it was, I mean, it wasn't like a real good name brand, but it got hot enough, it's not the same color it used to be. Did you hear that? We just went through. So what I wanted to show you here is that, so we use a special tool. I'm gonna take the last little bit out. So when that Forstner drill cuts on the Forstner bit cuts on the outside, so it almost always leaves a little plug in the middle of the mill. So because I'm remembering to talk about it, I'll talk about it really quick. Where those two meet in the middle isn't always a real smooth transition, so I've made a special tool. It's just a dowel rod with a slot cut in it, coarse sandpaper. I chuck it either in my drill press or in the lathe, and you just go in there and run it up and down and sand the middle out. So, all right, let's take a break. When we get back, we'll be about ready to turn. So we're going to drill this. This is going to be the top of our peppermill, the ball, if you will. So we're going to drill it. We're going to true it first. You can see it really needs to be trued. Then we're going to take the toe of our skew. We're going to put a little dimple right there. This is the trickiest hole to drill out of the whole bunch. Or can be. Won't say that it always is. And I forgot the drill bit that I usually use. So the club purchased some bits here a while back. So I just went and took a 1/4 inch machinist bit out of it. I would probably use Brad point bit if it was up to me, but this is going to be interesting. This olive has a real strong grain in it. So we're going to do everything we can to keep this bit true as we begin our hole. In fact, I was going to bring, and something else that I forgot about until just now as I'm mentioning it, I do have some center bits. And if you don't know what a center bit is, it's a very short double-ended bit, and it has a small small cutter built into the end of it, and then it has a 45, 60-degree flare on it that flares up to the full size of the bit. They're only that long, and so it doesn't give you any ability for the drill to start dancing when you start drilling. So that having been said, what I'm going to do for my initial start here is I'm going to chuck my drill as short as I dare. And then I very deliberately turn the lathe on. I'm going to bring my bit up into that dimple and lock the tailstock down and start drilling. And that's what you want to see right there. So you're going like, well, so what's the big deal? Some of you know this one I did this morning. I said everything went wrong that could go wrong. That bit was doing an Irish jig all over, okay? Because the grain caught it and it just started going out around. So how did I fix it? I backed it out and turned the speed of the lathe ray up, okay? And then the mass of the bit overcame the outer roundness of the hole, honestly, and it settled down, but it still drilled crooked. And this one may drill crooked. We'll just have to see. And if it drills crooked, we'll talk about what we do to fix it. Oh, okay, there. See, now it's. So. That's what you don't want to see. Now, why it changed from one time to the other, I honestly don't know. I should have shut up and kept drilling, I guess. So when the chips start flying out of your chuck, you know you're all the way through. Again, that bit's going to be warm now, so we want to be a little careful. That's one thing I kind of forgot to mention on the, while we finished just before we went on break, we finished with the 1 1/16 inch bit. It was very warm to the touch. So, okay. So we know that our hole's crooked. And we know that it's crooked. I mean, so there's where the original center where we captured it with the live center in the tailstock, and you can see how out of center it is. So in a former life, I just kind of lived with that, but we really don't want to live with that. So what we do is we have a couple of these actually. This one I made this morning. This is a special tool, and it's going to go in my chuck. Concentricity is important, so I have indexed my special tool so that the punch mark goes between number 1 and number 4 jaws. We can check, make sure that's true. It's true. I'm going to put my 60-degree tailstock in. Whew, almost had to chase that rascal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recut my tenon. Remember, I'm only driving that off of a 1/4-inch jam truck. So my tenon may actually be too small for my chuck now. I'm not sure. We'll take a look here and see. If it is, I'll talk around it. How's it going to talk around that? You'll see. Ah, no, look at that. Ah. So now, yeah, it's wobbly, but hopefully now I'm true to my hole. You see the importance of that? But now I have to retrue the face. I don't know. It's better than it was, we know that. And then the last thing I want to do here is I want to cut a short 1 16th inch tenon on this piece. The 1 1/16th inch tenon then fits through the hole that we drilled and acts as a guide for the peppermill. It also actually helps to make up a little bit for this crooked 1/4 inch hole that we have going through here. So this is the surface on this top here is basically a parting tool surface. So we want to clean that up. Also, we have to choose between flat, convex, and concave. We want flat, but concave is slightly better than convex. Because if it's yeah. Okay, so here's what we would have to do yet. And I'm going to talk through it in the interest of time. So this guy's ready to turn. This guy, before we turn him, we need to get rid of these tenons and get a nice surface with the best surface that we can get with our spindle gouge. And then we would do that by, for instance, we can chuck this guy in, still using our 60-degree center. Although, and frankly, it's ugly, but I take my parting tool and I part that tenon off. And when it looks like you're parting into the center, but you're not. There's a little space in there when your parting tool comes through. But you do want to have it chucked good and tight because it's going to wobble a little bit then as you bring that off. And then we kind of turn it around. Man, Thanks, Susie. And we put this guy in. So this is sized to fit my 1.5 inch. I come up here and again, I can clean this up with my parting tool. And or spindle gouge. Okay. I'm gonna skip that in the interest of time. But that guy stays in because that's what I use to turn the pepper mill. Oh. Well, maybe we will. We won't. So a paper towel is enough to give us a drive there. Typically, I don't need the towel here. I always put the towel here because it gives me a little separation between the two pieces, which helps me as I start to do my turning. So what time is it? 8:22. All right. We may not get this finished. I don't know. But we can at least talk about some things. So we're going to start out just by making everything round. So I know that my inside, my step in puts my mechanism out at that point there. So I know that I want my top to be here. That's what I want. That's where I want my top to come. Remember, you can always take a little wood off, but it's difficult to put a little on. So if you have any doubts, you want to go long, not short. The other thing we're going to do as we start to turn this, is we're going to pick a point about in here. One of the very first cuts we're going to make with the tool. So I know that my hole is 1 1/16 inch in diameter. And what I haven't talked about is why I make this what I call a classic shape mill. So the reason I like this classic shape is because the wideness at the bottom lowers the center of the gravity and makes the mill more stable on the table. Okay. When I grab the mill, I have a narrow part here, which falls naturally into my hand. Then I have a large ball. It just feels right. That's why I like, you'll see some guys out there that make some really ugly shaped pepper mills. You know, and you can play with this. I mean, you don't want to do design on the spindle. I mean, there's some things that aren't right about that mill, but I do really kind of like the shape. Okay, so as I'm evolving, I'm sorry, as I'm evolving in my turning, I'm starting to use this double bead here, and then also a double bead here. Now, if things had worked out right, this double bead here would be a stepped double bead, just like this. It would kind of echo this design element. One of the things that's wrong with this mill is somehow it got out of center, and you can see that it wobbles as I turn the top of it there. I am probably going to rework a little bit on that mill. So all of that said, then once I start turning, I lay it out, okay? So the base of it, I want to be approximately 2 inches from the bottom. This is the bottom of the mill. This is going to be the joint between the top of the mill and the mill body. And again, with this double bead, it helps, you know, this almost makes my case for me, is that double bead hides that out of roundness. It's still there. I know it's there. I don't like it, but it makes the mill a little bit more aesthetically appealing. If that was a square joint, the outer roundness would be ugly as heck. I mean, it'd just be sticking out there saying, look at me. The guy that made me is a dumbass. Okay? But so anyway, I mean, I can do enough of that without showing it to you at the top of a pepper mill. Okay, anyway, does that make sense? Questions? So that's the design element of it. So I know that my hole is 1 1/60. Pretty comfortable about having an outside diameter of 1.5 or thereabouts. And we're going to want that kind of up here toward the top. So that's going to be one of the first cuts that I make. And that's close enough. We don't have to worry about it any more than that. So I'm going to use my detail gouge before I forget about it. I'm going to round that bottom corner over just a bit. I don't like how rough that is, but we're going to go ahead and so I do this at home without thinking about it much, but with all you guys watching me, it's scary. Of course, I sharpened my tool before I came up here tonight because you always want to demo with sharp tools. The problem is I'm not used to working with sharp tools. So to kind of stagger that bead, once I get the first one cut, I'm just going to come in here, cut up underneath of it. Now we can refine that a little bit, but first we want to get rid of a bunch of material. We're going to use our spindle roughing gouge for that. Just the quickest way I know of to hog this material out. And I knew that was there, so. So this is why I have that paper towel in there. It just gives me separation between the two pieces, helps me know where I'm at as I'm making my cuts. It probably is helping to drive that top as well a little bit. This is what I should have done on that mill this afternoon actually, and I didn't. 'Cause now I know I'm centered on my body, on the through hole in the body. I'm about done with this. Okay. All right. All right. So anyway, I wondered if this would maybe run too long. So we're gonna pinch it off here. So now I would put this back in, probably with the again a piece of towel. I have an issue here. I may actually need to reduce the size on this because I have an issue here with a crack in this top piece. I think what I'll probably do is take it home and run some super glue in there. But I'm not that happy with it. But so then, the top piece, again, I cut my bead. The bead would be a little larger than the one on the bottom. I cut a big bead, which essentially this is. One of the first things I would do as I start to work on this top is I would take my thin parting tool And I would just come down and make a part right here on this line. This is the line that I believe is where my mechanism wants to come out. So go in, just make a deep part, and then that lets me kind of work my shape out. And then the last thing I do with the top is I have this little bit of a tenon here, and I mount it in this guy. Okay, and take light cuts, but it will hold it, and it will let you finish the top of that tenon. There would be other, you could hold that with a jam chuck if you wanted to, if you don't have a 4-jaw chuck. And yeah, your 4 jaws put little marks on that tenon, but it's inside the peppermill, who cares? So, any questions? It's time to be done. Susie, let's do the wood raffle, and thanks everybody for your attention. Next month, regular meeting. Keep your eyes out for an email about a workshop day. Yep.